Hello, everybody. My name is Peter Leonard. I'm the Group Program Manager for Microsoft Word, Publisher, and Sway. And thank you very much for coming here today. Hope you guys are all enjoying this week. It's the last day of Ignite. And I'm excited to tell you about some of the AI capabilities we've been working on Word for the past several months. Now, these capabilities, they span scenarios such as coordination within teams, reuse of content, and writing, which is the essence of Word. Now, when we think about the Microsoft mission statement, it's about empowering people and organizations to achieve more. It's achieve more. It's not do more. Now, what does do more look like sometimes? Do more sometimes can look like this picture. We've all been here, whether we're working late in the office or working on a kitchen table, and sometimes we're in Word. And we're not achieving more, we're doing more, and sometimes we're frustrated. And the AI capabilities that we've designed, that I'm going to talk about in the next 30 minutes, are designed to achieve more and not to do more, and they'll change this picture. And how do we design what goes into Word? How do we prioritize what goes into Word? How many people have had the experience where you download an app from your iPhone or try a new feature in a product, and your first reaction is, what were they thinking of? Did they ever actually talk to a real person? Did they ever talk to anybody in my company about how we do work? And the way we address that in the Word team is by something we call co-design workshops. And let me tell you what they are. So these co-design workshops are about 2 hours long, and they happen on-site, often at your company. And it can be in a conference room, a boardroom, or a cafeteria. There might be 20 users from your company there, a few people from the IT team, a few people from the product team. And those 2 hours, here's how we spend the time. The first hour is about listening and understanding. Listening and understanding to your pain points, to your frustrations, and to where you see opportunities. And then the second part is we get to design solutions together, like solutions to those pain points, those frustrations, and how to realize those opportunities. And the most important thing is this co-design workshop happens before we write a line of code. Before we write a single line of code, we do that. Because we want to make sure that whatever we build and ship several months later is going to make a real difference in your users' lives and help them achieve more. And that first hour, that listening and understanding phase, let me tell you that works. There's no demoware from the product team. There's no product roadmaps. There's no slideware. It really is all about listening and open-ended questions. Questions about, tell me about a time you were working on Word, you were doing something manual that wasn't about content creation. Or tell me what tool to use in conjunction with Word. And the second part is where everybody gets really excited. This is where people start jumping up on whiteboards and designing and drawing pictures. And we start asking questions as we try to solve these problems. What would happen if you clicked on that button? Or what would you want to happen? Or what resonates or what doesn't resonate? And one of my most favorite questions is, of all the ideas we brainstorm together, what is the one idea that means so much to you that if your company didn't pay for it, you'd be willing to pay for it with your own credit card because it would make such a big difference to your work life? And that really helps to identify what are the meaningful scenarios to go work on. So let me tell you about a couple of these companies we did workshops with and the ideas that came out of them. One of the first companies we did earlier on this year, we met with this civil engineering company in the United Kingdom. And they were a fascinating company to meet with. They're multinational. They design factories, tunnels, warehouses all over the world. And I met with about 25 of their civil engineers in a conference room and some of their IT team. And during that listen and understand part, we talked about how they do their work. How do these civil engineers do their work? What's their day-to-day life like? And one of the things they talked about was creating these customer proposals for new projects, for a new bridge or a new tunnel. And it would take, these customer proposals, they're like 200 pages long. And it would take maybe several weeks for 4 to 5 civil engineers working together in the Word document to create this proposal. And they're complex. I mean, I looked at these customer proposals. They're complex. They've got financial information, legal information. They've got CAD diagrams of ventilation shafts. They've got pricing estimates, schedules, lists, tables. And when I asked these civil engineers what was hard about these customer proposals, it wasn't the content. The content wasn't hard for them at all. What was hard was coordination. coordination about who was going to do what in the Word document, who was going to be on the hook for the conclusion, who's going to be the hook for the introduction, who was going to do the pricing estimate section. And they talked about then the anxiety and stress they would have as they near the deadline for this customer proposal, that they would suddenly find out that there was some section of the document that they were on the hook for that they forgot. They'd end up staying up late, cranking it out. They'd end up looking at that picture we saw a few minutes ago. And when I asked these engineers, how do they deal with this today? How do they manage it today? They talked about writing tasks on a whiteboard and taking photographs of it. I talked about emailing tasks to each other. They talked about putting tasks on sticky notes on their cubicle walls so they wouldn't forget it. And then they also talked about these patterns of text, these patterns of language that they used in Word. Sometimes they would do this square bracket, to do, colon. Please enter the ventilation shaft diagram here, or insert pricing estimate here, and they'd highlight it in yellow. So when they were working through the Word document, they could skim through that Word document and find all these tasks, these things they need to follow up on really easily. And then before that document went to that customer, they'd go and remove all those yellow highlights, those special patterns of language. Now, these patterns of language is not unique to this company. We've seen this in lots of other companies. And in a survey we did, we saw it in about 60% of Word documents, these use of these kind of patterns of language to denote kind of follow-ups. And when I sat down with these civil engineers and we're doing that design section, and we're talking about what would it look like if we solved this problem of coordination or made it better, they talked about better teamwork, more efficient and more effective collaboration, and the ability to stay in the sync and stay in the flow. So let me show you what we built in the product. So here we are, we're in Word Online, and if you haven't used Word for the web in a while, definitely check it out. We put a lot of work into it over the last year to really improve it. For example, we've got track changes on just recently. That was a really good feature for coordination within teams. So in this scenario here, I'm Alex. I'm working with my two colleagues, Diego and Lynn, and we're working together on this proposal. We're making use of some of these built-in features like track changes. I'll just accept some of these here. And you can see also here on the side, you've got comments, which is another great feature for coordination within teams when they're working these scenarios, where they can leave comments on each other's sections as they work together. Now let's go down and think about that scenario. Those civil engineers, they were using this patterns of text. And some of the things they would do would be like add. They'd use the word add or to do or insert. So let's try that. So add north wind stakeholders table. Now this is a reminder for us that we need to add the stakeholders table in the document on the corporate stakeholders. And you can see that something really interesting has happened here. Word has underlined that with this blue dotted line, because we actually have a model that detects all these various different patterns that people use. Nobody uses the same pattern. Believe me, there's lots of different patterns. And we've detected that this is one of these patterns, these follow-ups. It's not content, it's one of these follow-up tasks. And we suggested that we think this is what it is. And if you click on it, you can mark it as a follow-up. So it marks as yellow on a nice black background, exactly how those civil engineers were doing manually in the document. Let's try another one down here. Let's ask Lynn to add the finance table. So let's do, one sec. Lynn Robbins. Now the first thing that Word does is it checks to see does Lynn have access to the document. You can't ask Lynn to be on the hook for something if she doesn't have permission to the document. That would be pretty unfair. So let's give Lynn the access to the document. Add. So the really cool thing about using these notifications with follow-ups is it generates a notification in your inbox. So there's one that I was done earlier on. Here's where Diego asked me to appear. He said, hey, Alex, do you know what the model number released in 1975 was? Now, what happened there when Diego asked me that question, that follow-up on the model number, it generated a mail that appeared in my inbox. And this mail is great because in the mail, I see the question that Diego asked me, hey, Alex, do you know what the model number released in 1975 was? And what's better, it gives the chunk of text, the context in which that question was asked. So I can actually answer that question straight away. That model number is CR113. And I can answer that question to Diego straight away without actually leaving my inbox. And that's really important. Imagine if it's a 200-page document like that, civil engineers. The last thing I want to do is go into a 200-page Word document, navigate to where Diego asked me that question, find out where it is, and answer the question. I can do it on my phone, I can do it on my desktop, and I can get back to what I was doing and stay in the flow of what I was doing and not get too distracted. Let's go back to our presentation. Now, with these follow-ups, these ability of Word to detect these patterns of tasks that people use, and we see very commonly, as I said, in a survey of documents, it was about 60% of documents were using this. It's great. You can have all these follow-ups highlighted in yellow throughout your document, and you can skim through it. But that's going to be hard if it's a 200-page document. You're going to have to navigate through 200 pages looking for those yellow highlights. So what we're also going to provide is this side pane here on the left, where you'll see all the follow-ups to do with that document. You can filter them, you can sort them, you can find the ones that you're on the hook for. And then over time, we'll sync all those follow-ups with Planner and To Do. So you can see all your tasks on all your follow-ups across all your Word documents in one place and you can easily manage. And when you use follow-ups with better coordination, better, more efficient collaboration, you'll end up with better content because you have spending less energy on anxiety and coordination and project management. You can focus on the content, and that's the end result, is better content. So let's talk about another company we met with. This company was a telecom company in France, and they were super interesting. They talked about using Word for technical specifications, for pitch documents for new ideas, for research reports, technical reports, and so on. And we met in this kind of cafeteria space with about 20 of their users and some of the IT team. And during that first hour of that co-design workshop, that listening understand part, they were talking about their pain points and their frustrations. And to be honest, nothing was new. I'd heard it before from other companies, and unfortunately, some of it was familiar. They had problems with tables and lists and so on, but nothing was new. Until at one point, the director of the team, he stood up and he said, and he was annoyed, he said, last year I created 150 PowerPoint presentations and 70 Word documents, and Office did nothing to help him with reuse. And he was really annoyed about that. Reuse was his pain point, his #1 pain point. And when he said that, I went, he's so right. Reuse is my pain point. I have this all the time. I rarely create a Word document just purely from scratch. I'll take some paragraph that I worked on a few months ago that I put a lot of work into wordsmithing, getting just right. I'll reuse that again in a document. Or some diagram that I saw in a colleague's presentation. That's a neat diagram. I'm going to use that as well. Or some table that I used a few weeks ago. And then I'll add some extra content on top of that to express my message and add value. But I'm constantly reusing content in my work. Reuse is a really important thing. And when I asked this director, I said, how do you reuse today? Tell me what it's like for you today in your workplace when you're doing reuse. He would talk about, he would open up a Word document and he'd remember, oh yeah, that paragraph or that table, that list, I want to use it again. Where is it? And he'd then start opening up his file share and hunting and pecking, opening up Word documents all over his screen, looking for that piece of content. And then maybe he'd go into his email and start looking for file attachments, Word documents he'd sent somebody else. Where was that? And now he's in email. It's going to take him 20 minutes to get out of email because he's totally sucked into email to get back on task in his document. And he's totally distracted. And at this point, he's thinking, it could have been just easier to just recreate the whole thing from scratch. Maybe he's lucky, maybe he'll find it, but it's pretty 50-50. Or he might just give up. And then when we were thinking about this, we were thinking about working together, and we're saying, what would it look like? What would his day-to-day life look like in work if we solved this reuse problem? If we made it way easier? He talked about being more efficient. He talked about, like the civil engineers, he talked about staying in the flow. But what was really interesting is he talked about, hey, when I'm hunting and pecking, I'm not being creative. I'm not adding value. I'm not achieving more. He's not being paid to hunt and peck across a file share. That's not his job. His job is to add value, and he's not adding value. And then we're thinking about, how do we solve this? What would be a really good way to solve this? Like the content that he's either seen or the content other people have seen over the last several months that he wants to reuse. We thought about, well, could we put the signals in the Microsoft Graph to work for that, to solve that problem, in terms of who he works with, who works with him, his virtual work groups. Can we use those signals to solve this problem and add value to him? So let me show you what we built in the product. So here we're back in our proposal here. So let's go down to one of these placeholders, the one we did a few minutes ago. Remember, we said we want to add the stakeholders table for this corporate stakeholders section. That's one of the tasks, the follow-ups we want to do. So now we want to actually add that corporate stakeholders table. And we know we've done that before. This is not something new. The stakeholders table is out there somewhere. So if we right-click here, and we use search, and this searches across all your files. And now let's look for that corporate stakeholders table. So I think it was in here. So here what we're doing is we're searching across all those files, and we're able to find those files. And here's this document that we saw a few months ago, which is this international marketing strategy. Let's see, and there's the corporate stakeholders table. And then with one click, I was able to grab that table from that Word document, bring it into the corporate stakeholders section. I could stay in the flow. I could stay in my document. I was not hunting and pecking and going through file shares like that director. I was not sucked back into the black abyss of email where it would take me ages to get back on task. So, and then I can just click on this, resolve. Got my job done. Great. Let's do another one. Here's one under responsibility. Alex, hey, can you add the image of the Northwind Sustainable Practices? So I think that was in a PowerPoint deck that a colleague worked on, I saw. So here's this PowerPoint deck. I can go down. I'm looking for that image on sustainable practices. Here it is, right there. And then with one click, I'm able to grab that diagram, bring it into my Word document, and get back on track again. Very easy for me to reuse content across PowerPoint and Word and other apps. Let's do one last one, and here's an interesting one, is add the priorities table. Now let's look for that one. So again, I use search. Now, some of the companies that we worked with are multinational. Like, for example, that civil engineering company. They work with a manufacturing plant in Spain. So let's just try this again. I didn't try one more. So here's this document. You can see it's in Spanish. I'm looking for that priorities table. And here it is. And then I can take that, and I can then translate it. And I can take this section and translate that. One sec, I'll do it again. I'll do this one more time. And I'll just highlight all that. Make that English. You can see there with just a few clicks, I was able to reuse that priorities table that was in the Spanish document, translate it, and bring it into my document by staying in the flow, staying in my document and not getting distracted. Again, I can just then have the satisfaction of just resolving that follow-up, another task done, or moving on. Let's go back to our presentation. So you can see with reuse and using search and putting those signals from the Microsoft Graph, we can help solve this problem for that director. Make it really easy to reuse content, not only within Word to Word, but Word and PDF, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and OneNote. Again, make it really easy to create your content and make impact. Let me talk about the last company we dealt with, worked with. This was a pharmaceutical company in the US. And they were interesting. They talked about using Word for legal submissions, government applications, research reports, and so on. And we had the meeting, it was a room like this where we met with them, and there was about, probably I'd say, 18, 19 of their users and some of their IT team. And I asked this question during that listen and understand phase. It's one of my favorite questions. I asked, tell me about a time where you're working late at night and you were doing something manual in Word that wasn't about content creation and you were frustrated. What was going on? And I've asked this question a lot. And the answer that comes back, probably about 80% of the time, the answer that comes back again and again when you describe that scenario and say, what are you doing in Word? And it's not content creation. You're doing something else and you're frustrated. What is it? What are you doing? Expression. They have all the content in the Word document already. They have all that stuff already. It's late at night. They have a deadline coming up that night. They need to get a document to their management or to their customers. And they already have all the content in there. But they know that people suffer from information overload. They know they have only one chance to get their message across and make a good impact. And they can't see the wood from the trees. They know that probably the introduction is too wordy, too long, isn't expressed the right way. And they wish they had their trusted colleague who sits beside them in the office. They could turn around to them and say, hey, can you just have a quick look at this document? Skim over it. Let me know what you think. Is there something missing? Can you tighten it up? Just somebody to help them with. But it's late at night, and they don't have that trusted colleague. And we talked about during that design section of the co-design workshop, when we're designing it together, we thought, what would it look like if that trusted colleague was in Word? What would it be like? That trusted colleague would be simple to use. It would be responsive. It would be visually current. It would provide you the contextual relevant suggestions, just suggestions at the right time, the right place. And most importantly, it'd be secure, like all our AI capabilities. So I'll show you what we built in the product for this scenario. So we're back in here in our proposal. It's Alex and Diego and Lynn working together. And you can see there's this new button up here called Ideas. Let's click on that one. And then see what happens here. This is really cool. So the first thing is the stuff that you would expect. There's corrections, spelling and grammar. You'd expect that. But then there's all these refinements. Now these refinements are super interesting because this is where you spend your time late at night. It's not on the spelling and grammar. It's on refining your document. On if you want to express and get the right message and communicate the right impression to your customer or to your management. So let's try out a few of these refinements. The first one there says acronyms. Let's see what pops up here when we click on that one. Okay, research and development. It says instead of using R&D, you should use research and development parentheses. That's a good suggestion. Makes my document more professional. End-to-end, again, spell out what end-to-end is. That's good. Let's do another one here, clarity, and see what comes up here. I want to make my document more clear. So promoting their founding. Okay, I'll take that one. That's more clear. Supply, okay, I'll ignore this one. Ignore that one as well. Okay, here's another one. Change comprised to included. Okay, I'll try that. And then emerge to appeared. Okay, here's an interesting one, conciseness. And this one is very common. I've heard this as well as like people trying to be concise. What you think about is informational overload. I really want to make my paragraph or my abstract or my introduction really concise. Help me make it concise, not so wordy. So let's see what conciseness pops up for. Okay, change all of to all. That's good, less words, great. Basically had to had. That definitely is an improvement. And all across or across. Yeah, I'll take this. I definitely like the conciseness ones. Formality is a good one for me. I know when I'm writing a document, sometimes when I write a document to my peers, I'll be very informal. But then when I'm writing a document to my executives or to my customers, I definitely want to amp it up and not be so informal. And sometimes when you're rushed and you've got a deadline, it's very easy to flip back and forth between formal language and informal language. So let's see what pops up here. What's to what is, yep. Couldn't Could not? Great. These are all, this is interesting. Instead of using the word perks, maybe use the word rewards, benefits. I'll take that one. And here is, that's a good one. There's another refinement down here, which is inclusive. Let's check that one out. So what happens if I click on inclusive? It says, oh, gentleman's agreement. Hey, you'd be better off saying not gentleman's agreement, but unwritten agreement. That's a good suggestion. It's helpful. And the last one here, this is one of my favorites, perspectives. So I really want to make my document pop and kind of make it spice it up a little bit. So let's see what happens here. It says, okay, the factories, Contosa and Northwind are building new factories that will occupy 2.5 square kilometers. Okay, that's a good one, but how big is 2.5 square kilometers? Well, it turns out it's about the area of Central Park in New York City. Well, I'll take that suggestion as an addition. Let's do another one. 150 days, which is about 5 months. No, I'm not going to take that one. That's not. This one's interesting. So we're going to deliver on value to over 80 million customers. 80 million customers. That is about twice the population of California. That seems like an interesting statement to make in my document, to make it pop, make it more interesting to read. Again, everybody's getting information overload. It's really important that whatever you're communicating or expressing is interesting and engaging, and this will help with that. Now, on that subject of information overload, there's a really interesting section down here called stats. Now, I know when I'm sending my document to my customer or to my management, they've got limited time. I don't want to send them a document that's going to take them half an hour to read, maybe about 10 minutes, max 15 minutes. So when I'm writing my document, stats is actually telling me how much time it'll take to read it. 5 minutes, that's great. Max I want to go to is 10 minutes. So keeping within that budget of 5 to 10 minutes is great. And the last one is knowing that people sometimes are going to skim my document. They might not read it all, even as much as I want them to read it. They might just skim it. I want certain points just to pop. The salient key points just to pop right out. So help me out with that. And if I had my trusted colleague beside me, maybe that might help me. But remember, it's late at night. It's dark. You're in that lonely office. You're really tired. You can't see what the key points are, and you need a bit of help. So let's see what ideas suggest for you. So that's a good one. That first part, the shared core values, that seems like a key statement. So I'll make that bold. This one about the history, I'll make that italics. So you can see there, using those enhancements has really helped make those key points pop. Let's go back to our presentation. So with ideas, using ideas to help with writing leads to more effective communication, more job satisfaction, and more confidence that you've got your message across. Because there's three parts to writing, when you think about it. There's writing, there's expressing your message, and there's people reading your content. And if you're not getting help with expressing your message is a really important part of the process. So you see now, as we've gone through this talk, how we've used these kind of co-design workshops to identify what are the really key problems to work on. What are the important ones to work on, to come up with solutions that make sense for your users. And that's not the only thing we look at when we're deciding what to build in Word or how to design it. We take in input from Compass Connect. Many of you were in Compass Connect. Thank you very much for that. We look at trend analysis, usability studies. We also look at app feedback. I have an engineering manager who, on a daily and weekly basis, goes through the app feedback, and we use that to make improvements in Word. But these co-design workshops, they're a really integral part of the product lifecycle. They help ensure that whatever we build is grounded in real-world scenarios that help make a difference to your users. So when we work in it and we ship them several months later, they'll make an impact and allow them to achieve more. So the next time you think your day is going to end up looking like this, you're going to remember coordination with follow-ups. You'll remember reuse with search. And you remember write with ideas. And your day won't end up looking like this, but will end up looking like this. Thank you very much. I have time for some questions now. If you're going to do questions, thank you. You could use the mics, and if you could state your name and your role, that would be great. And if anybody's interested in hosting a co-design workshop on their company, please come and talk to me. I love doing these co-design workshops. It keeps us honest and makes sure that we deliver value to you guys. So please come up and talk to me afterwards. But if any questions, and I've got two of my colleagues here who've worked on this product quite a lot and made these things happen, so they'll happily be able to answer questions as well.
So Terry, my current role is digital transformation strategy, but great, all this stuff's in Word. For whatever reason, I have no idea why, but across our organization, we use PowerPoint for everything. Yeah. Will these be coming to PowerPoint too?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, definitely, yeah.
We don't know Word, we just know PowerPoint apparently.
No, those features are coming to PowerPoint, so just, yeah, coming soon. Any other questions? Go ahead.
I actually have two questions. I'm Ginny Von Quarter. I'm a trainer. Yeah. A lot of the people I train are folks who are support professionals. So they're concerned with what the document finally looks like. Yeah. And one of the features that they've asked for a long time is the ability to have less formatting done by people who are providing content, because they end up having to unformat it to be able to reformat it. And they can't simply clear the formatting, because they have to understand what the intent was of the person, the engineer, or whoever it was who plugged that information in and used bold or italics or whatever to figure it out. So I just ask that continue to stay on the list. So many of the people I work with, they don't necessarily understand the content, but they're totally responsible for how that document looks when it's done. Yeah. So my first specific question was, I have a client that has their own set of patterns of search. They don't use add and review, for example, where they want to add something, they use %%. Is there any way to tweak that list, or will it pick up codes like that? Yeah, definitely. I mean, no, you know, the folks who are working on that follow-ups, the patterns, they have a list of patterns that we've discovered through Microsoft, we're working with Microsoft Research, and we'll constantly add to it. And you can see how, you know, the UX, when we suggest this is a suggested pattern, we think this is a follow-up. If you click on that, that's obviously a signal back to us that we got that one right. But we'll constantly be adding patterns, and that's a good one. If you come up to me afterwards, I'll take details of that pattern and I'll pass it on to the team. Okay, so that's not something that can be added locally, but okay. Not right now. And my other question was, when you were showing the enhancements, the choices that were there were bold, underline, and italics. Is there an intention to also include styles? Yeah, we can definitely enhance them. I mean, that's the basic list so far, but definitely there's more you could do there in terms of making like inline text where it pops right out. It's got quotes around it. You can do a lot of different things in there on making a key point pop. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Hi. I just have a suggestion or a request. Yeah. That it would be really great, along with all the stuff that you currently have, for the AI to be able to go and look at other content that may be stored within whatever, you know, range you have access to bring up ideas of how to incorporate other material, maybe from other presentations, other Excel documents, and correlate that information to give you more actual content as well as formatting and stuff. Yeah, that definitely, those acronyms, remember the acronyms? Yeah. That also relies on some of the content in the Microsoft Graph. Because in some companies, they have any company I know has a lot of their own specific acronyms. Sure. And so we'll use that content within the Microsoft Graph to be able to surface up within your tenant acronyms that are actually relevant to your company, using the kind of information you talked about. Yeah, but it would be great, like if another team is working on some analytics in an Excel spreadsheet and I'm writing up something for, say, marketing, to be able, if I would have no idea that they even have that content, so to, you know, have something smart enough to tell me, hey, put that in your document. Here's something that pops, add to your, exactly, it's a good suggestion. Thank you. Great, thank you.
I'm with UNC Charlotte, and we use Google Docs quite a lot. If you're in a Word document and you do a search feature, will it also find the Google Docs documents?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, because that's what they use.
No, we're not. No, we don't support that. I'm not even going to say yet either, by the way. So we don't support it.
My name is Phil Malinak. I'm with CDW. I write proposals. I live out of OneNote. So I write up a lot of tasks to do out of OneNote. Is there a way to interface that, the task sequencing that you just demonstrated with OneNote?
And you imagine that, can I just go, you imagine it would be like you're writing your content in OneNote, and you might do a follow-up in OneNote,
Yeah.
and that would appear, say, in To-Do or Planner.
Correct.
Yeah, I think the team is working on those follow-ups. They're starting off with Word, and they'll start appearing in PowerPoint, but then all the other apps over time.
And then what about as you're writing a follow-up request, I write it up for myself, it creates not just an email sending, which gets lost in the inbox, but also a task.
Yeah, so it will create, if you do an app mention, currently it will create a notification to your inbox. But if you just do a follow-up, and we can assign that, the plan is to over time to assign that, you can assign that task to either yourself or other people, and then it'll appear in your task list.
It already does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? So some of this will come out over the next several months. So you'd say pretty shortly. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Bye.